over the last couple of days that we can see that rivers provide a lot of services, and really from a restore perspective, we're coming from the premise of identifying that river restoration can increase those services and provide a healthy ecosystem service. And when we're talking about the services, we're talking about flood risk management, groundwater recharge, pollution control, recreation, and especially when there's an opportunity to regenerate an area. So this is a very short workshop. I'm going to give you a little bit about introduction to what Restore is all about. It's a EU Life funded partnership, and this particular workshop is really aiming to look at the role of urban regeneration and development as a way to reconnect and enhance our rivers and reconnect them to the floodplains as well. So the purpose of it is that we'll start off with Tony, who's the Restore manager, give us an outline of Restore, and then we have two speakers, Yves Herbert and Katia over there, and they're going to give us a couple of case studies, and then we have an opportunity for an open discussion, and everybody will come up to the front to have a bit of a discussion, and we've got Walter from the ECRR representative as well to make those links with the Restore project. And I'll pass it over to Tony. Thank you.
Yeah, what I wanted to really show was to introduce the Restore project to some of you who haven't come across Restore before. We are an information and communication project, so we're looking very much at being a focal point for information, but also to find out what information you need, what would help you communicate with others, and also what would be helpful, how would you want to be communicated with. So what I was going to do is to go through a bit of what we're meaning by river restoration, what it can do as part of particularly development, but really to introduce the ideas of what the benefits can be of river restoration and how we can better communicate with the development sector, with architects, engineers, and really that's, if you could think of some questions and what you might want us to have a look at for you as I go through, then we can have that discussion between us at the end. As we know, through a lot of urbanisation and over a lot of the last century, there's been a lot of change in our rivers. So introducing the ideas that rivers provided a lot of functions, they provided a lot of services to us. However, a lot of the urbanisation and development that has gone on, particularly in cities and particularly in urban areas, have reduced the values of some of those. So on some locations they're limited to providing flood risk management, perhaps, although sometimes the conveyance that concrete has changed has actually changed the problems, and removing the floodplain from those areas has caused risks. So the recreation value, the drinking water value, all these other aspects have been greatly reduced in a lot of areas. Within the cities, it can often be spot the river. That's a river, but you wouldn't really know it. And where they haven't been covered over, they've been completely sort of encased around in concrete, put on the side, and very much used really sort of as more of a waste or disposal area, and forgotten about. What we want to look at, and what we're looking as part of river restoration, is to start working more with natural processes within the rivers. Because if we say the words river restoration, depending who you're speaking to, it could mean all sorts of different things. So to clarify what we're talking about in this case is we're very much talking about working with natural processes and trying to re-establish a number of the different values that our rivers can provide. So, what we've looked at is to have a look at some of the projects and see what different benefits you can get from river restoration. So we've been asking people what values have they found, and there are some areas that perhaps don't always jump to your mind straight away. Things like the health value of increased recreation by improving parks. Issues of urban pollution, where you get more green space and how they can, how river restoration can help that. Flood management is a little bit more of an obvious one, but also very importantly a sense of place. No one's going to go and visit that concrete river. However, if in your local area you've got something that's a little bit more of an interesting landscape, it can very much create a sense of place for that area. What we're looking at is some of these parks, you can see them putting back the form within the river. So that here it is this location that was restored as part of the development next door. The only reason they could develop there was by improving the flood management within the park area. They've also got a lot of other benefits from that, of having a more interesting landscape, a much better access to the river, and the locals, when they've been interviewed, surprising things like the fear of crime. By having more people going to parks and those sorts of areas, a more useful environment, they've actually, whether it's reduced crime rates, it wasn't particularly what the police were finding, but the fear of crime was actually quite important in a more accessible landscape. This again, previously was a large park in a city, and by creating this, they found that in sites, people visiting went up over 70%. People were staying there, I think, 47 minutes longer, and a third of the people visiting had never been there before. And these were local visits to the site. There's a lot more mixture of people actually using the space. What I'd also emphasise is it is important to be working towards river restoration in some locations. You're not going to be able to do the full taking away all the sides of the channels and full restoration for the river to be able to move again in a lot of locations in an urban context. But you can still achieve linkages and connectivity between some of the other sites. So in this location, by replacing a lot of the gravel within the river, by looking at the walls within the constraints, it is important to have a look at the connectivities, even if your site is quite small. Another area where it was very constrained, thought I would introduce the work that they were doing at the Olympic Park. These slides are actually from an engineer who was working on this project, and what he was emphasising is it was for them a very constrained site, that they weren't particularly looking at the river to begin with, but seeing the value of what the river could do as part of the development, and actually increasing the attractiveness for there, and in the long term increasing the processes and the value of the site. They did manage to create wet channels across the site. They did a lot of clean-up of the area, and also re-establishing smaller channels, as well as some wet woodlands within the site. But what he was trying to emphasise with the value, when you looked at the site beforehand, Admittedly, he's taken the picture in the winter, which and then taken the picture in the summer, which emphasises some of those points. But and at this site, recently the river had been barraged downstream, so it was quite difficult to get some of the plants established, and various other systems within the site had been impacted. However, there's still quite a lot that could be achieved and quite a lot of change that can be seen within the site. I was just giving you a flavour of the types of information, the types of case studies that are out there for urban locations. But what we've been trying to do as a project is to put this information and link it to our website. So we've split the information into themes. So there's information on to do with the land use sectors, to do with hydropower, to do with flood risk management. And from events such as this and others, we're getting information on what people want to see there. Also, all the case studies I've put up are linked to on the case studies wiki tab. What we're trying to add to that is the pictures and any evaluation or experiences that people have had as part of delivering those case studies. It's also as a wiki that other people can add to the site, and it's open access for you to use. So this is the picture of the wiki. You can see the locations. We've now got over 330 sites, so we're still adding a lot of case studies to there, and the information you can find there. Lastly, just to note, we've been developing guidance for developers and planners and architects. When we've been saying we've been developing it very much with architects and planners on what they want to see. So the guide isn't a fully technical how to do river restoration. It's very much looking at what they need to much more take that approach to river restoration. Thank you.
We've got a minute or so has anybody got any questions either to ask Tony, or anything about the Restore project that you may or may not understand?
It's a question about, I don't know if it's included in your website, but do you have what the driver for the restoration is? Like what made the Olympic Park Authority, or if it was them, do this work on the site? Is it their corporate social responsibility, or because I know that there wasn't an environmental legislative driver for that? And then I suppose if I don't know if that kind of information is included in the store, and if it's not, it'd be really valuable to try and get that from the project partners, because I think a lot is maybe known about what could be done, but the limitation is whose responsibility is it to do it and who ultimately pays for it as well. So
specifically with the Olympic Park, some of they had additional drivers, particularly because of the Olympics and those sorts of aspects and the legacy issues. So they did have slightly different drivers within that. I don't know the actual specifics of that, but I think what you're saying is a really good point, that people are working with developers and maybe influencing or persuading, and their drivers sometimes are quite different, and that we need to recognise what those drivers might be. And also having clear objectives. For the Olympics, it wasn't to restore the river, it was to improve the environment there, to make it more accessible, and to make something that would last into the long term because of the developments that were happening around there. So in that one, they're very clear that it wasn't to restore the river back to exactly where it should be, or those sorts of aspects. But I think it's a good point that when we're collecting that, I think that should be top of why they did it and what drove them and what persuaded them to do it.
One more question and then we need to...
I'm just really following up on that. Piank has an initiative called Working with Nature, which sets out a methodology for developers who are looking to, or prepared to kind of put nature at the top of the agenda. And I think probably, Claire, is partly what you're getting at here, is that we're finding increasingly that, yes, you have corporate social responsibility, you have environmental requirements and so on, but actually ecosystem services is becoming increasingly important in terms of demonstrating to the developer why it might be worthwhile, what the extra benefits are of actually going down kind of less conventional engineering type solution.
Make a note there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now pass you over to Yves, who is a partner and principal designer in a project called Joining Nature and Cities, and you're going to be talking about a project in Lille. That's correct, yes. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. Sorry for my English because I'm French. But I will try to translate my language in English. Okay, thank you for your invitation. I will represent GNC International, Joining Nature and Cities. Since more than 30 years, our multidisciplinary design firms, including landscape designers, architects, urban planners, artists and engineers, are daily working in the field of the landscape design and the urban design. Our 45 collaborators operate on 3 office platforms situated in Belgium and in France. We carry out projects in different European countries like Belgium, France, Luxembourg, Hungary, Croatia, and also in Africa, for example in Morocco, Libya and Ethiopia. My name is Yves Herbert. I'm a freelance landscape architect and urban designer working with GNC International since 30 years. I'm project manager, associate, and a member of the board director of GNC International. Today I will present the restoration of the Tortoise. The project is located in the countryside in the south of Lille's periphery. It's situated in the bed of the Deul Valley at an altitude of around 20 meters. The river Deul flows to the river Lys. You can see on this map the contour lines which indicate clearly the low level in the bottom of the valley. The canal was built, the canal you see here, was built 150 years ago to allow boats to reach the North Sea from the Parisian basin, but especially the industrial areas situated 30 kilometers further in the south. You can also observe that we are really in the plain, in an area where wetlands dominated. During the last century, farmers tried different ways to dry the soil with the aim to extend the exploitation of agriculture. The remaining of this management leaves us now a complex water network composed by ditches. The Tortoise project was included in the Parc de la Deule project. This wider project received the Landscape Award of the Council of Europe in 2009. This park aimed at 3 targets. First, to protect the underground water. Second, to restore all industrial areas. Third, to enhance the green network for the inhabitants of the metropolis. It has a surface of around 2,500 hectares. The development of the project was based on 2 axes. The first one is very readable in the territory and concerns the Canal de la Deule itself. We wanted to reinforce by different ways the links between urban areas and the canal and to improve the feeling of territorial identity of the inhabitants. The second axe is about the Tortoise, which is less readable in the territory because it is a drainage ditch. The function of this ditch is to drive the water coming from the plain. The goal was to transform this common ditch into a river in order to give a new dynamic inside the countryside. Our ambition was to help the inhabitants to become rooted in their territory. The stakes of the program: quality of the water, to protect the groundwater, to promote the auto-treatment of the water; hydraulic, to solve problems of hydraulic saturation due to the sewage disposal networks, restoring of one water flow; environment, to improve the quality and the ecological value of the turtles, to enhance the diversity of the wet ecosystem; living environment, to increase the value of the landscape, to develop entertaining activities in the aquatic environment. Before the beginning of the study, we received the advices of two experts. One was a botanist and the other was an hydraulics engineer. The first gave us a good vision of the biological specificities of the site. The second helped us to understand the water flows cycle. He also gave solutions to improve the flow during the dry season. The Tortoise is not a river. Before we began, the Tortoise was not a river, it was a water ditch, like showed on these pictures. But like on those pictures too. During the wet season, the Tortoise is full of water, but it draws only a water line in the landscape. It is really not a river. It is a water ditch in a large plain. The Tortoise project was reinforced by policies concerning the enhancement of the green network in the Parc de la Deule. The project has also been connected to the urban zone by a walking path network. The Tortoise project and the two networks, ecological and walking path, allow the inhabitants to join the different interests of the territory, like public equipment, green areas, agriculture, countryside, forest, etc. I propose to visit with you the project from the south to the north, from the upstream to the downstream, along the 7.5 kilometers of the river. Due to the different plot exchanges operated with the local farmers, here we got the opportunity to extend the restoration project on a wider surface. It was really grateful for the project. It allows us to enlarge the waterbed, and we realized a new walking path along the river in order to complete the walking path network. We stretched out the bank linear. It was a good way to increase the auto-treatment capacity of the river, but also to improve the ecological value of the water ecosystem. On that part of the landscape project, we worked more with the interactions between the river and the meadows. I will say that in this sector, all the plots belong to the city administration. With an agreement with the farmer, we dug different low ditches through the meadows. We pursued different purposes like enhance the water ecosystems, extend the water storage capacity during the wet season, improve the drainage of the meadow soils. It was really important to minimize the slopes of the bank river. It allows the birds and other aquatic animals to reach the meadows. We designed a new walking path trying to cross the river. It was important to improve the contact with people and the river itself. The footbridge, with the first earth-worn bridge in the world. It's not a joke. No, I will make my English in life. Okay. We are on another path here with the Tortoise, and it was, of course, a wider branch of the Tortoise, and we dug again to extend the waterbed to the other part of the territory, and to improve the ecosystem, water ecosystem. You see here, first the white of the tortoise was like here all along, and we dug here all of this part to extend the waterbed. We install also a path along the river because we want to improve the contact with itself. It's the pleasure for the dog, but for the fisherman also. We cross the river in different points with footbridges. But footbridges is also a signal along the footpath. On another part, we minimize our action. Only it was a former agriculture area, and with the exchange we made with different farmers, it allows us to transform that area in an ecological area with new foresting here and with new plantation along the river. Another part where we try to catch water. Sometimes when the water level will going up the natural level, and then so we make like a doorway to catch the water inside and to let all that part in the with water. You see, the Tortoise is here. We dug only the river to permit the water to go inside the country. This is the same part, but during the dry season. Another part where we make we dug more inside the country, and we install also here doorways to catch water and to permit to flood all that part, like here. The Tortoise is here, we dug here, and we installed the doorway at that level to permit the water to go up during the wet season and to catch the water. This is the doorways. Birds. Fantastic. No, I didn't see any birds before we do that. We create new ecosystem, of course. Further, we make where am I? No. Okay, again, in that part we dug also the Bank River to enlarge the waterbed, and we let fall the trees to offer to the birds high position. And for example, we were here on the bridge for the last pictures, and here it was an worst terrain, and we had a ditch here along, and we modify the ditch in that direction to optimize the water bed and to optimize also the ecologic value of that part. Well, and I'm at the end. The cost. Don't forget, we managed all those works 10 years ago, okay? And the cost was about €150 per linear meters. The restoration benefits are, of course, the social benefits, education, heritage discovery, environmental awareness, community life, leisure activities, walking, fishing, sports. The economic benefits, betterment, positive pictures of the territory, rural tourism, rural heritage discovering, agriculture economics, local agriculture promotion. Environment benefits, water quality, integrated farm management, natural water treatment, flood risk management, water retention, biodiversity, diversification of the ecological habitats. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, we'll hold questions for the moment because I think we'll have the other speaker first. So keep those in mind, and then we'll have a bit of discussion at the end of the restore session. So I'm now going to pass you over to Katia. She will be talking about a transboundary cooperation, and it's looking at the plan of the Meuse Valley of the Belle. Thank you. Can I use this
Oh, it doesn't matter. Hello, I will speak about an international project on the River Meuse, which is a cooperation between Netherlands and Belgium. I didn't know exactly what to prepare for today, so I made a lot of slides. I didn't know what exactly the audience wanted to hear, but we'll see how far we get. So I will speak on a little bit on the project. I will speak on the working together between the Netherlands and Belgium. What's not always easy, but it gives also some benefits. And I will give some reflections on what I think could be better and what is worthwhile doing for the future. I'm Katia and I'm working for the Agency of Nature and Forest here in Belgium. So I am not part of the water manager. So the River Meuse is managed by two different organizations. But we are involved in the project to see that there are nature values will be restored on the field. So just to say what it is about, it's a stretch of the River Meuse in Belgium, which is the border between Netherlands and Belgium. Officially it's called the border Meuse, but in principle we call it more the common Meuse. And I think it's a stretch of 30 kilometers. And it was, or it is still, mainly influenced by human activities like gravel mining in the bed. It was quite deep. You have dikes, you have towing paths, and what is particular for this river is its rainfed. So in the summer you have very low discharge, like 10 cubes, know how you say it, and in the winter they can pass a lot of water. So the average difference between summer and winter can be more than a 6 meter difference. And there's a lot of deposition, because you have a gravel bed in the river, but up on the gravel bed there is a lot of loam. I think so hundreds of years there was a loam in the river which is polluted by heavy metals from the industry in the Walloon part of Belgium. But one of the characteristics of this river is that it's not you can't use the shit on it. So this is why it is still more or less a little bit natural. So we started with this project in the beginning of the 90s, and in principle the Netherlands started first with their project, and they had a project mainly on gravel excavation and safety and nature development. They call it groen voor grind, green for gravel. They started first, and because of they started, we started also to think about the project doing on. But we had gravel mining also in Belgium, but not really on the river, but in very deep gravel pits, which later on became water. And this is in a special decree. And the gravel mining should be finished, I think, a few years ago. So we skipped out gravel mining. We will do this process. We will just do integrated water management, nature development, and see how we get agriculture, nature, and recreation all together. Because you may not forget that the river along the side was mainly in agricultural use. So you can see a little bit the difference between the two projects. The project in the Netherlands really wants to take out the gravel, go for safety and for nature, and we wanted to keep more or less the land use, and mainly work on the dikes, because you have a river and you have the dikes, lower the dikes, and make it more naturally, so that the contact between the river and its riverbed will be restored. So what the habitat types which we had in mind to come back as on the Dutch side as on the Belgian side were the marshes, the river forests, the pastures, and of course the riverbed itself, which will be in gravel. So we go from an agricultural landscape to a more natural landscape. I will give some views on it later. The Netherlands, they start, they started much earlier with their planning process. We started also in 1994. What's important to know, there was an intention declaration of the political parties or the ministries. This is from 1995, and the aim was to bring people together, and we will make at the end of the planning process, we will make an integrated vision on land use for both sides of the river. And all this process was coordinated by the Benelux. At that time I started also to work on the project. So everything was in planning phase. We made environmental impact assessments, we discussed it, we had a lot of fights about that. We did some cumulative impact assessments, and this was the end of the planning phase, the cumulative impact assessment, putting the both projects together, and it resulted finally by a mutual agreement in 2004 for the ministers. Also to solve the problems which were on adverse effects, because the Dutch project had adverse effects on Belgium. So there was, the ministers had to agree on it. We did it, and we made in 2004, there was a kind of declaration. It was a declaration on principles of integrated water management, on nature, on which status you take for looking to effects, because this is a big issue, what is your reference to negative effects. We had an agreement how to solve the negative effects, and there were also opportunities for mutual working together and to make plans better. So from the planning phase in 2004 we went, this is picture of, I don't have so nice pictures as you have. This is the river Meuse about what I'm speaking about, and this is our final vision, what we want to do in and surrounding the riverbed. The Dutch side is on gravel mining, and the Belgian side is in principle, all the work will be paid by the government. So it's an investment of the government, of public money. On the Dutch side, it's paid by it's budget neutral, we call it. It should be paid by the gravel mining. This is what we want to realize. But we realized more now than the Dutch did when we started that. In 2004, the Benelux stopped working, and there was a new international organization which we call VNBM. You can find it on the website, vnbm.eu. It's a Flemish-Dutch bilateral, I don't know how you call it, Meuse Commission. And it's not a political level, but it's the highest official level. So in principle, I'm not inside, but I do all the work, all the preparation work. But for my organization, the big boss is inside. So, and they make the decisions. In principle, everything they control all the process from the working, the planning, the policy. And if there are problems, they will discuss and they will make an agreement and see which process you have to follow. If problems cannot be solved, it has to go to the highest political level, and the ministers should be informed. But we try to solve it beforehand. They come along twice a year, and we have a huge agenda and huge things to prepare. I didn't show you the structure because it's quite particular. So this is just a picture to show how we are working. On the side there you have all the different locations which are in planning, which are in construction, and you see when you have the spots, green, orange is planning phase, and green is implementation phase, and when there's a big spot, it means it's finished. But in principle, the project is going until 2023, 2025, but safety should be realized in 2017. Safety level and nature 2 years later. So since the implementation since 2004, so what happened mainly on the side there is an ongoing gravel excavation, so there is no nature values still restored. What we did is putting mitigation measures in the river, because the big project in the Hollands had adverse effects on the groundwater level. First of all, they wanted to put the mitigation on the Belgian side in our nature reserves, but we thought, no, you have two options: or you take less gravel, or you do something on the river, because the river is very deep, so you have to bring up the river, so make higher the river bed. We put some measurements inside the river. They also did some river improvement measures because the river is quite unstable, so they put the big rubber stones inside. And what is quite amazing is of cooperation is that to get the Dutch safety, there were some measurements what should be done in Belgium. So I think 3 or 4 locations, what we call Bourtine, because it was the minister at that time, Bourtine locations, we did it on our side, but it was completely paid by the Netherlands government, and there was a mutual agreement on it should be for, it should have benefits for safety, but it should also have benefits for nature. So we try to follow this. From the project from the Belgian side, the problem was when we started in '95 that we had a lot of ideas, but we had no political, political backup. I was working on this project 10 years, and finally I had a meeting with the minister, and he told that we didn't know that there was a moratorium on this project, so nothing was going on. 10 years later, the waterway manager, so the river manager, slowly started to take up the project, but not on the idea that it is integrated water management, but as a safety project, because he had to put it inside his organization, but with benefits for nature. And now we are still working on some remaining bottlenecks inside the river. So the most, from the project which is going on, the best examples of restoration are now on the Belgian side. This is an example of the European project SER, that you can consult and you see from restoration, nature restoration. You can read about the river Meuse, what is done. Okay, here some silly pictures, but this is how we try to put some gravel inside the river at 8 spots. This is all just from after the working in 2010, 2013. I didn't have time yesterday to show more nice pictures with green and animals on it, but you see, on beforehand you had a river with the side which was very with a bit higher, and then suddenly it dropped into the river. You see, they make more space. They give more space to the river. The same in Herbrecht. It's also for the Bourtine location. You can still spot some agriculture behind, because it's the vegetable, no, fruit trees, some fruit trees. We didn't solve to get out all the agriculture, but we are trying to. This is Nagels. This is a Belgian project where we did a lot of nature restoration. We took out very high dikes next to the river, and we replaced the riverbeds next to it. It's a very nice region. Same one. Yeah, a bit more. This is old gravel excavation, you see, which we try to renaturate a little bit. Lichtenweert is an example. Okay, so what we are doing, just to tell what we are doing as an agency for nature and forestry. So mainly our job all the time was looking over the shoulder of the river manager to see if nature was enough involved in the outcome. We are doing the quality control of appropriate assessment. We are member of many steering committees, mainly also on the monitoring of groundwater effects, because there's a monitoring for until 2023 now. We started many years ago. Also the mitigation measures should be monitored all the time to see that what we made is stable. We give advice on the building license. And our main part, what we in fact are doing, is a Natura 2000 implementation, because the area is also a Natura 2000 site, on the Dutch side and also on the Belgian side. The only difference is that the Dutch, they put the river inside the Natura 2000. As you know, the river is the border between the two countries. We didn't do it. We put the land in the Natura 2000. So we have a little bit difficulties in pulling the plans and the programs together.
If you can just wrap up, yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, you haven't really time for discussion.
Stop. Okay, she asked me still to say something about okay, I will stop this. This is about climate change. This is about benefits. There's a river park since 2012. There is a river park for recreation. I mean, there's an organization dealing with recreation and nature to bring it together. Maybe this, some personal thoughts maybe could be interesting. I think the cooperation between the administrations could be better, because we started as an integrated project. We went up to a water management project, and I think it's time to get back to be an integrated project. To my opinion, there's still a not clear link between the Water Framework Directive and Natura 2000. It's difficult to pull it together. Also, Natura 2000 itself, it's very difficult to say in Europe, we want to make management plan together. It's quite impossible for the moment because the procedures are slightly different. We don't have the same timing. What to say more? Okay, then
I think you might
yeah.
replace probably good place to stop.
Yeah.
Yes, good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mark, would you like to come up? And you guys stay here. We've got about 10 minutes for some questions. If there's anything that you're interested in the Restore project, or would like us to take forward, or if you have specific questions for either of the speakers. And Bart is here, so that's to demonstrate the link between Restore and the European Centre for River Restoration. So again, questions to any of the panel. Over to you.
Maybe I can ask from
Sorry, can you just say your name as well?
Yes, from the European Commission. One point for the Restore Wiki, and it was mentioned by Claire partly in the previous session, and I don't know if it's on the website or not, is if there is information available on the costs of these projects. That would be very interesting. I think also we were getting but also information on the funding.
If you could put on the costs, and also you've got to say who's paid for it.
Yes.
So,
And this relates to my questions for the two projects for Yves. Was there any funding for these EU funding, or was this nationally funded? And were there payments to the farmers involved? Because I realized there was some take.
The funds were coming from different level, from the national, from the l'État, the state, the French state, from the region, from the metropole, Lille metropole, and from the commune too. It was a deal first, it was a deal between the commune and the metropole, where it was still in francs, and when the commune put on the table 1 franc, the Ville Métropole gave 5 francs, and the rest was coming from the state region, but also from the Interreg fund. But the proportion, I don't know exactly. But you can provide, if you want, you can go on the site of the Espace Naturel Métropole, Lille Métropole, and you can maybe find some information.
And were there payments for the farmers?
For the farmers, okay. For the farmers, it was different. The example of the widows I exposed. The plots were belong at the city administration, but we of course discussed all of the technical aspect. We discussed it with the firm. It was concerning around 8 hectares in that park, and what we pay, it's not the farmer, but it's the material needed to close the meadows for the cows. You see, it was a deal. No money on the table, but only the material. It was a good idea because for us it was a good way to install a vocabulary in the landscape, of course.
other questions?
Also for Yves Herbert, I don't know if there was any ecological monitoring done in the project to see if your ecological goals, which you intended to achieve, were achieved.
Until now, they didn't do a new monitoring because at the beginning of the project we did a diagnostic all on the project, but now they are achieve a management plan, and after I think they will install a monitoring about the faunistic and floristic method.
Well, I'm Yves Herbert from the International Shelter Commission. I was interested by this transboundary project on the River Meuse, and especially to be able to succeed with, at the beginning, quite different objective, as you say, industrial and safety and ecology, tourism. And I have seen in the Shell Estuarium about the same with the long-term vision until 2030. And so I was wondering whether it was a discussion, a sort of political counterpart, where in the case of the Shell, well, of course, the problem was the harbour of Antwerp, which was very industrialized, and the nature was more in Netherlands, in Zealand. And so they decided to say, okay, for the Shell, we have also differences like we have in the Maas, or whether totally independent.
I don't know the answer. If I understood the question good, you wanted to know that there was a connection between the two projects politically.
Yes, was it de lange termijn visie voor de Schelde, dus de long-term vision for the Schelde Estuarium? Or was it a sort of political counterpart of this Meuse project?
Well, I don't think so.
Or was it
No.
something?
No.
It was something apart.
No.
I could tell a little bit more about it because I'm now the chairman of the European Centre for River Restoration, but by then I was working with the Ministry of Water Management in the Netherlands, and I was directly involved in the Meuse project on the policy level and the first design and planning of the project out of the Rijkswaterstaat in the Netherlands. And as far as I know, there was no connection between the Scheld and this project. The main driver of this project was the gravel extraction, because the gravel companies, they wanted to continue in some way because there's quite a lot of money to earn, and they wanted to continue, but there was a strong opposition from the environmental sector in the Netherlands. And then they came to this deal, and it was quite revolutionary by that time. That they came also to a kind of public-private financing of the project, because it was always in the politics to do something public-private, but it never happened. And here they managed to start the project in that way. But of course, people in politics, they on one hand want private money, but they are always afraid about the risk that they lose public money. So I know all the political debates in that situation about the project, and it was concentrated on the Meuse and the gravel extraction and the safety together in the project, and no connection is discussed.
What happened in Belgium, I think, is that the project was blocked by politicals so far until there was a new decree on gravel mining. Only from there was an agreement on that, the project could continue, because what was doing now until now was only working on our own possessions, to say, and to do some measurements which were not involved in private lands, or not taking out the gravel.
I think actually you have to stop that. You have
announcement?
A little
A little announcement saying
Martin.
both of the projects could potentially be using rural development funding to pay for the necessary measures that's needed on changing agricultural land use. And as a little plug for in a couple of months' time, I'm going to be hosting a conference on how to better integrate the objectives of the Water Framework Directive into rural development programming for the next 7 years. So it would be, I think what we need is for those that work on nature and WFD to come up with the opportunity mapping that you're doing, and for that to then be translated into the authorities who deal with rural development programs. So I'm going to send an invite to this, and it would be quite good if you could be involved in that, but we have to run one.
Thank you. Martin, did you want to say one last thing?
Yves, I was very interested. You had a lot of social and public benefits that you had on the list at the end. Was that from your experience and your organisation's experience, or were there guidance documents that you could use to help you to bring those into the project?
Both. I would say